We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Hayim and Beis Meseches Pesachim. This is Pesachim Daf 95b. The Gemara is talking about what are the laws by Pesach Sheni. Each pasuk is going to include something that's similar to that detail, and it's going to exclude. And now we're on V'etzim lo yishbru bo. It says you can't break the bones of the Karban Pesach by Pesach Sheni as well. Mai kamar, but what does that come to include? Al tochlu mimenu na. Again, you can't eat from it when it's raw, when it's not fully cooked. Beprate mai kamimati, and what are we excluding? Lo sishchar al chametz dam zivchi. Also, there's a pasuk that says you shouldn't shecht it with chametz around. Rashi over here says, first of all, my kamarbi al tochlu mimenu na dechayev Pesach Sheni, meaning Pesach Sheni, there is a halacha, you can't eat from it if it's raw, if it's not fully cooked. And lo sishchar al chametz, this does not apply, meaning the mutter l'shachtu al chametz, that's excluded. You are allowed to shecht Pesach Sheni even when chametz is around. It's kiritnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, matzah v'chametz imo b'bayis. You can have matzah and chametz together with him in the house. So that's what is excluded. Again, lo sishachar al chametz dam zivchi. And the Gemara again says, eipachano, why don't we reverse it? Maybe we should include the other one and exclude the other one. Again, mitzvah de gufei adif, it's better to include the one that's actually part of the guf of the Karban Pesach itself. In this case, no, how much you're cooking it, that it should be cooked, it shouldn't be raw. And we exclude the one which has to do with chametz, which is not in the guf of the Karban Pesach itself. Harishon ton halal bachilaso v'chulu. The Mishnah said that by Pesach Rishon, when you're eating the Karban Pesach, you need to say halal. That's not true by Pesach Sheni. Minoha nimili. How do we know that's true? Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok, Amar Kra, because the pasuk says Hashir yiyah lachem kolil hiskadesh chag. Rashi over here says, Hashir yiyah lachem biyom shetigoalu min agolos. On the day when you're redeemed from exile, kalel hiskadesh chag. Kimo shatem noagim l'shorer beleil hiskadesh chag. Like you normally sing on the night of the Chag, v'ein loch leile Chag lahatin shira chutz mi leile psachim alachilaso. What other night is there where we say shira? We're talking about the night of Pesach. So that's the pasuk says, Hashir yeh lachem kalel hiskadesh Chag. It's going to be like the leil hiskadesh Chag. That's kalel hiskadesh Chag. Meaning, laila hamekudash l'chag, the night which is sanctified as a holiday. Ton halal, that's the night you have to, that requires halal when you're eating it. Laila she'ein mekudesh l'chag, but if it's not the chag, if it's not the yontiv, ein ton halal, there does not need to be halal when you're eating it. Rashi says, Laila hamekudesh l'chag can go in Pesach Rishon, meaning Pesach Rishon, which is a yontiv. So then you're going to say halal when you eat the Karban Pesach, she'ein mekudesh l'chag, but if it's not a yontiv, can go in Leil Achilas Pesach Sheni, she'ein o yontiv. If it's not a yontiv, then it's not going to be. So that's what we learn now from this pasuk of, again, Hashir Yelachem, Kalel Hiskadesh Chag. And the Gemara continues quoting the Mishnah, Zev Zet Tu'unin Halal Basiyason V'chulu. It says that both Karban Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni require halal when you're actually doing the Shechita, when you're doing the Karban Pesach. The Gemara says, my time, what's the reason? If you want, I could say, Laila kamimayit, Yom lo kamimayit. Laila, we're excluding the night, we're not excluding the day. So that's one answer, Rashi says. Laila de Pesach Sheni miyet, meaning the night of Pesach Sheni, when you're eating the carbon, that's excluded from that pasuk. Aval Yom shuzman asiyaso, but the day when you're doing the avoda of the Karban Pesach by Pesach Sheni, lo miyet, that's not excluded. Vareu ke Pesach Rishon, it's just like Pesach Rishon, sheton halal b'shah shchitasa, which requires halal at the time of the shchita, kedamra b'tam nishchat, like we say in Parak Tam Nishchat, it'll come on also later on. Amrina neviim shebeinem tiknu lehem shiyu omrim al kol perak v'perak v'chol dvar chidesh. Okay, so you say this halal ba'asiyaso that you do. That's one answer. V'ba same, if you want, I could say another answer. Efshar Yisrael shochten as Peschayin. Is it possible the Klal Yisrael is going to shecht Karban Pesach v'notlen as lulavein, or they'll take the lulav ve'ein omrim halal? They're not going to say halal. Of course, when they do these mitzvahs, they need to say halal. And Rashi says, Efshar the kaven the dvar mitzvah ton halal. If it's a dvar mitzvah, it needs halal. And Rashi just says notlen as lulavein agrora nasva the brayso hachi beperak basra. While we're talking about mitzvahs, they say halal, so we bring along lulav as well, and this is a brayso over there, and so that's why it's quoted along with this halach over here by the shechita of the Karban Pesach. V'nachol and sli v'chulu. Then it said in the Mishnah that you eat them roasted, and it also said that it's docha Shabbos. And the Gemara says Shabbos in tumalo. So it sounds like Pesach Sheni is docha Shabbos. So you would bring Pesach Sheni even on Shabbos, but in a situation of tumah, you would not bring Pesach Sheni. And the Gemara says Masnisin deloka Rabbi Yehuda. That means that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, because we learned in a brayso doches a Shabbos vein doches a tumah. The Tanakama, the brayso says again Pesach Sheni is docha Shabbos, but not docha tumah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rabbi Yehuda says af doches a tumah. It even is docha tumah, meaning meaning even if you'd be tamei, you bring Pesach Sheni. My time at the Tanakama. Now, what's the reason of the Tanakama? The whole reason you pushed off to Pesach Sheni is because you were tamei. You weren't supposed to do Pesach Rishon b'tumah. Now you should do Pesach Sheni b'tumah. That wouldn't make any sense. Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda says no. HaTorah chazra olav la'asoso b'tara. The Torah is trying to get him to do it b'tara, but lo zacha yasa b'tumah. But if he's not able to, even on the second chance, he's still tamei. So then he should do it b'tumah. And the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Pesach Rishon doches HaShabbos. Again, Pesach Rishon is doches Shabbos. Pesach Sheni doches HaShabbos. Pesach Sheni as well is doches Shabbos. Pesach Rishon doches HaTumah. Pesach Rishon is doches Tumah. Pesach Sheni doches HaTumah. Pesach Sheni as well is doches Tumah. Pesach Rishon ton lina. Pesach Rishon requires lina. We'll see Rashi. Pesach Sheni ton lina, and Pesach Sheni as well is ton lina. Rashi says, Ton lina laila harishon yolin b'Yerushalayim. It means that first night you should stay in Yerushalayim. Mikan v'elach rashay lader chutz l'chom. After that you can leave the walls of Yerushalayim. Besochat tchum, but you have to stay within the tchum. V'hainu lo alecha li'oel shechutz l'chom v'lo lebeso mamish. You shouldn't go mamish home to Yontav because it's still Yontav when you're talking about Pesach. So it's still the Yontav of Pesach. But the point is you can leave Yerushalayim after that first night. V'yod the kaboy le'suye. Olas Re'iyah. Of course, you also need to bring the Olas Re'iyah. But anyways, the point is, it does require lina, and that's true by Pesach Sheni as well. You need to stay that night in Yerushalayim. And the Gemara just points out, Doches HaTumah, it says in this price that the Pesach Sheni is Doches HaTumah, Kiman Rabbi Yehuda. Who does that follow? That follows Rabbi Yehuda. But the Gemara asks, will Rabbi Yehuda tell in lina? But is it really true then? If this brisa follows Rabbi Yehuda, does Rabbi Yehuda really say that lina is required by Pesach Sheni? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Yehuda says, Minayin lePesach Sheni she'ein to'en lina. How do you know the Pesach Sheni does not require lina? Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Ufanisav haboker v'alachta lo alecha. You turn in the morning, you go to your ohel. That's written by Pesach Rishon, and it says, Uchsiv, it says, Sheishes yamim tochal matzos. It says right next to it, it says, for 6 days you have to eat matzos. That's the pasuk right next to this pasuk of lina. So hanechol l'shisha to'en lina. The idea is, if you're going to be eating matzos for 6 more days, meaning that's the Pesach Rishon, then you require lina. But she'ein nechol l'shisha, but if it's not the regular holiday, if it's just Pesach Sheni, you don't have six more days of Pesach, ein to'en lina, there's no halacha of lina. So in any case, you see clearly in this brisa, Rabbi Yehuda holds the Pesach Sheni does not require lina, and the Gemara answers, Trei Tanoi v'alibud Rabbi Yehuda. You're right, there are 2 Tanoim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, to Machlokas Tanoim, what Rabbi Yehuda actually held. Rashi says, Hanechol l'shisha, meaning sha'ochlan olav matzos shisha yamim. You're going to eat matzah for another 6 days. V'lishna dekra nakat. This is just the language of the pasuk. Ukra l'drasha asal alamin al yemos haPesach shein reshus ba'achilas matzah chutz milay l'rishon. The pasuk itself is actually a drasha that we say the first night there's an obligation to eat matzah, and the rest it's a reshus. You don't have to eat matzah. You're not allowed to eat chametz, but you don't have to eat matzah. But the point is, we're using the language of the pasuk. But the point of Rabbi Yehuda again in this second brisa is that the requirement of lina does not apply by Pesach Sheni. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, HaPesach sheba b'tumah. If you have a Korban Pesach that is brought b'tumah, meaning the majority of the congregation is tamei, so they're bringing the Korban Pesach b'tumah, lo yochlu mimenu zavin v'zavos nidos v'yoldos. People who are tamei in other fashions, not tamei meis, zav, zava, nido, yoledes, they're not supposed to eat from it, v'yimachlu, but if they do eat from it, petur and mikares, they are potter from kares, they're not chayiv kares because this was a Pesach haba b'tumah. Rabbi Eliezer potter afal bias mikdash. Rabbi Eliezer goes even further, he says you're potter, they're potter even for the issue of entering the Beis HaMikdash tamei. Rashi says, Lo yochlu mimenu zavin degave tamei lenefesh chsiv ish nidchavein tzibur nidachin. This halach is only by tamei meis, that we say that a tzibur can do it when they're tamei meis. Aval gave ziva af tzibur nidachin, but in terms of, let's say there be zavin, so even a tzibur gets pushed off. They're not supposed to do it b'tumah. V'yamachlu petur mikaris, but if they do, they don't get karis. The ochel kachim b'tumah k'diyalaf b'braisa b'gemara. Normally, kachim b'tumah, you're going to get karis. Not over here. We're going to learn that out in the brisa. Avol mibias mikdash lo patrinu rachmana. But according to Tanakama, the fact that they entered the Beis HaMikdash is still a problem. They entered b'tumah, they should get karis. Rabbi Eliezer poter af mikaris to bias mikdash. Rabbi Eliezer says they're poter even from the karis of bias mikdash. Again, v'tayim yalaf b'gemara. The reason is going to be learned out in the Gemara. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, zavin v'zavos nidos v'yoldos sha'achlu b'pesach shava b'tumah. Let's say you have these various people who are tamei in different ways, and they eat a Korban Pesach, and the Korban Pesach itself was brought b'tumah. Yachal yu chayav, and I might think they're chayiv kares for that. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, Kol tohor yochal basar v'nefesh asher tochal basar mizevach hashlam asher laHashem v'tumaso olav v'nichrasa. So the pasuk again, these 2 psukim together, it says somebody who's pure needs to eat the meat, and it says that somebody who eats it and they're tamei, they get kares. Meaning, nechol l'tahorim chayav and olav misham tamei. If it is the kind of Korban Pesach that is only eaten pure, then if you eat it tameh, you're going to be chayiv kares. However, v'she'eino nechol l'toren, but if you have a Korban Pesach that is ba b'tumah, it is not eaten by people who are pure. They're already tameh because the congregation is tameh, so ein tameh and chayav and all of misham tameh. So those who are tameh are not chayiv if they do eat it in tumah. Rabbi Eliezer says, Yochel dochku zavin v'nichnasu le'azara b'pesach haba b'tumah. I might think, it's the same as Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah, I might think that a zav who comes and they enter the azara in a situation of a Korban Pesach that was brought b'tumah anyway, Yochel yu chayav, and I might think they're chayav for entering the mikdash tameh. Talmud Lomar, again, the pasuk says, V'yishalchu min amachane kol tzarua v'chol zav v'chol tamei l'nefesh. It says, send out of the camp anyone who has saras, or who's a zav, or who's tamei meis. And again, we make the same kind of drasha. Bisman shetmei meisim mishtalchin. If you have a situation where tmei meisim are sent out of the azara, so then zavin and mitzorain mishtalchin. Then you got to send out the zavin and the mitzorain. Ein tmei mesim mishtalchin, but if the tmei mesim are not sent out, again, like a Korban Pesach, haba b'tumah, ein zavin and mitzorain mishtalchin, the zavin and mitzorain are not sent out as well. Again, they're not going to get kares for entering the Beis HaMikdash tameh. Boy, Rav Yosef asked the following question. Dochaku tmei mesim v'nichnasu lehechol b'pesach haba b'tumah. Mahu. What if the tmei mesim would come, not only would they enter the azara, but they would even enter the hechol? Now Rashi over here says, that's a place where really they're not supposed to go at all. You don't need to go into the Heichel in order to bring Korban Pesach. You just need to be in the Azara. Even Kohanim only enter the Heichel when it's needed. So now this guy, so Rav Yosef is asking in this particular situation, what happens in this case where you have a Pesach of a B'tumah, and now the Tmei and Mesim are entering even the Heichel where they really don't need to go. So what do we say? Ma, what's the halacha? Midi ishtri tumas azara, ishtri nami tumas heichel. Do we say from the fact they can go into the azara, so they can go into the heichel also? There's no problem. O zilma mai di ishtri, mai de lo ishtri, or maybe what's permitted is permitted, what's not permitted is not permitted. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rava says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Vayeshalchu min amachana afilu mixas machana. It says you get sent out of the machana. That applies even to part of it. Rashi over here says, afilu mixas machana ava b'shein mishtalchin mikol machana shchina. Even though they're not sent out of the whole machana shchina, shari mutar be'azara, because the azara is machana shchina and they're allowed to be there. Tmei mesim b'pesach haba b'tumah mishtalchin miyah mimixasu min ha'hechol. But the Gemara is saying it's possible to be sent out a part of it, meaning from the hechol. So the idea is yes, even though they don't get kares for entering the azara in this case, but there's going to be a problem if they enter the heichel. Ika diamri, some have a slightly different version. Amar Rava says, Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, Vayeshalchu min amachane el michutz lamachane teshalchum. It says, send them out of the machane, and they should leave the machane. Meaning, if you have a situation that they get sent outside of the machane, then you read the pasuk of Vayeshalchu min amachane. And this actually goes the other direction. I said slightly different version. This is a totally different version of Rava. Some people have a version that Rava said a leniency over here. They're not chayiv on the bias mikdash, meaning al mechutz lamachane teshalchum hainu heichel kedesamach le'ashar nishochin v'socham ve'shalchum in amachane azara kach kibo Rebbe. Question exactly which girsa, which part of it means the heichel, which part of it means the azara. But in either one, Rashi says that he has an opposite girsa as an alternative. But in any case, the point is, if you don't have a problem being in the azara, there's not going to be kares for being in the heichel. Boy, Rav Yosef asks further, similar kind of question. What if the Tmei Mesim come and they eat, not only do they eat the regular part of the Korban Pesach, they eat the emurim as well. They eat the emurim, which is supposed to go on the Mizbeach. Rashi says, what's going to be the halacha over there? We'll see the continuation of this question in the next video on Daf Tzadi Vav Amud Aleph.